And we're live. Hello, good evening, and welcome for those of you that are here. Please come in, get seated, grab an appetizer, drinks, get settled. It is Tuesday night, December 3rd, 7:01 p.m. on the East Coast. It may be Wednesday, depending on where you are, or earlier on Tuesday. Either way, thank you for being here. As always, please say hello. Let us know where you're from. And we'll give it a couple minutes to get everyone and get settled. Oh, Katie's here. Hi, Katie. And she's from Atlanta. How's Kira, Sandy, how are y'all?
Good. Also doing pretty good. I'm from Houston.
Yeah, H-Town represent.
Let's go.
Absolutely. Nathan, good to see you. And Sandy, where are you currently?
I'm in Ontario, Canada. So like the middle of Canada.
So what's the temperature currently?
Below freezing. We
That
have a lot
sounds
of
great.
snow, yeah.
Oh, how much snow do you have?
Like probably like half a foot right now, if I'm getting my American measurement right.
Wow,
Yeah.
good job, yeah.
I want to go to Canada.
Well, you're welcome to come.
We should all be streaming from Sandy's house right now.
I know, we should.
Yeah, I've never been to Canada, and it's strangely a bucket list thing for me. There's like 3 or 4 places I want to go in Canada. I have no good reason why I haven't been.
We're going next November, remember? For that ultra, or no, but not the ultra, for the trail race?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
That was very sincere.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Eric. It's
Sometimes
good to see you. Eric in H-Town as well. Lots of Houston folks in the house. If you're just joining us, just say hello. Let us know you're here and where you're from. We'll go ahead and get the housekeeping out of the way, and so we can dive into how to handle the holiday blues. This is one of my favorite town halls because the holidays can be difficult. And Valerie was just in Canada in August. She was on an Alaskan cruise, other side of Canada, near Alaska. So
we're
welcome.
Geography here, y'all.
Don't loop me into your geography issues.
We won't get into that. It's okay.
Okay.
I can talk about theology. Don't ask me about geography.
Differentology. Hi, Wiley. So this town hall is intended to serve as educational content and is not intended to replace therapy. For treatment-related questions, please be sure to work with your local provider or contact your local clinician. The IOCDF is not a crisis hotline. If you are in crisis or ever feeling suicidal or unsafe, please go to your local emergency room or call 911 or the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. As always, we want to create a safe space and be kind and compassionate and respectful to everyone. We're here to support one another. Also, this is being broadcast on several social media platforms as well as NBC on the East Coast. It was a joke. So keep that in mind as we share our innermost thoughts with each other. And with that, I quickly want to let everybody introduce themselves. So we'll start with Kira. Kira, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Kira. I'm an IOCDF advocate. I was actually on last year's town hall for holiday blues, so I'm super excited to be back. And I am a undergrad student at Rice University, so I'm currently in Houston, Texas, and I'm studying neuroscience and cognitive science. So yeah, and I can pass it to Sandy.
Thanks, Kira. Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Sandy. I'm in Canada, as I said, and I'm a library science student. I'm almost done my master's, so I'm almost there. In April, I'll be done. So that's very exciting for me. But I'm also part of the chronic illness SIG. I run that with a few pals, and it's really great. The IOCDF is great, so I'm glad to be here tonight.
Thank you, Sandy. And Reverend Katie O'Dunn.
Hi, everyone. I am Katie. I am an ordained minister and an interfaith chaplain, and I do a lot of work at the intersection between faith and OCD around scrupulosity. I run a virtual community app called Stick with the Ick for folks of all different faith traditions, and we focus on training clinicians and clergy. And I also have the pleasure of leading the Faith and OCD Action Council for the IOCDF and working with so many awesome folks. So love doing this work, but also love letting folks know that you can be a minister and have OCD, and that it's okay to seek treatment and engage in your faith practices. And then I'm also married to this one.
Yes, my name is Ethan. Katie's married to me, and including Akira. I'm a baby boomer, which I'm fine with that. I'll never let it go.
I remind you of this very consistently. Was that from a year ago's town hall?
It was. It was.
So.
I had to recall the joke. Yeah, for sure. And just for the record, I don't know if anybody knows this. I know this. Sorry, Kate. I hate to bring up the exes in my past, but I dated a librarian in Boston, and I had no clue how powerful they are. I had no idea what they have access to, what they control, how much they know. I think I'm kidding, but it's unbelievable. We could get in anywhere. We could do anything. People always think they are the true VIPs. I'm deadly serious. Would you agree, Sandy?
Yeah, I mean, we'd have research skills, so I think that's positive. We welcome everyone, which I think is, again, positive.
Well, I think, I don't know. I was amazed at everything she had access to and could do. And so major credit, Sandy. Okay. So we're here to talk about handling the holiday blues. As we know, with OCD can get, and related disorders can start to feel a little intense as we near the holidays. Obviously we've passed one holiday with Thanksgiving. So woohoo, over one hurdle. Just a few more left. So I think it's important to recognize what some of the obstacles that come up look like for those of us and how to navigate them. Nathan, I'm not a baby boomer. I'm a Gen X, but Kira can hang with dishing, and I madly respect her for it. So I try to stay on her good side, to be honest with you.
I say it with the most love for you, trust.
I know, but I still have mad respect for you. Hey Zach, hey CJ, good to see you. So I'm gonna tee it off to the gang, but while we're that, feel free to put in the comments, how do you normally feel during this time of year? How does your OCD typically respond, and do you have skills and tools that help you navigate? Do you find this time really overwhelming? Do you love this time of year? Just fill us in, and we'll integrate comments as we go. But Kira, how do you usually feel during this time?
Oh, goodness. Normally during this time, I love Christmas. Always have. I also mentioned this a little bit last year, but I'm getting back into the vibe of loving Christmas and everything, because when I was a competitive gymnast, it was around this time that I got injured. So that really took a toll on my mental health and everything. But definitely getting back into enjoying Christmas, but also looking forward to it because that means finals are over. So right now, your girl is a little bit combusting. But yeah, definitely. And over these past few years, with finals and everything, I've definitely noticed my OCD starting to get a little bit worse around this time of year. I was just talking with my mom, actually. I feel the need to turn to some old coping mechanisms and compulsions that I kind of got rid of in the past. And I have to lock in and be Kira, no, you do not want to do this. We do not want to go backwards. And so then I start up doing all of my ERP really heavily again and deliberately working that into my schedule. But over the years, I've definitely become more self-aware of my limitations and how stress impacts my OCD. But yeah.
How did you get past? I think we can all relate to something happening specifically in our life around a certain time period. And then it feels like that every time, every year around that time, something happens, right?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I know for me, there were I had very obvious patterns in my own OCD. How did you sort of overcome that? What are some of the things you do now to where you get to around this time and you're able to sort of move past that period?
Definitely. Speaking from, I guess, like the kind of injury that happened, which made me kind of dislike the whole kind of season and things like that. It just kind of, I got over it with time passing, and I originally attributed the injury to losing my sport and then having a lot of free time on my hands, which OCD gladly filled with lots of intrusive thoughts and compulsions. And so I went down that spiral and everything. But now I am living my best life, not completely free of OCD, obviously, but it has a much smaller impact in my life. And I can look back and really appreciate how far I've come. And I can understand that that was a really difficult time in my life. But now being here just a few years later, I can really appreciate the journey that I've been on, I guess. And so I don't really want to like block out that time, but really pay attention to it. And then kind of say to myself, like, you can do hard things. Like when stuff happens again, you'll get through it. And then as far as like the finals always coming around this time of year, I kind of have to look at my schedule, realize, Kira, I know your limitations, and just say your OCD might get a bit worse over these next few weeks with the upcoming stress. And so that's when I just have to be like hyper aware and very diligent about my ERP, because in the past, I've just kind of brushed it off and be like, it's fine. If I do a few compulsions here or there, it won't be that big of a deal. And then I really backslide, and it's just not a good time for Kira at all. So definitely the more, I guess, time passes and the more experiences I have, I can pick up on the cues of like, yeah, I'm not feeling my best anymore. Time to get in the ERP OCD toolbox again. But yeah.
And I wish I'd had the level of insight that you have at your age. Might sound old saying that, but it's true. Like, it's so
Boomer.
But it's I'm not a boomer, Gen X. But regardless, it also makes me so happy because it shows that the work we're doing is working, and that's amazing. So thank you for sharing, Kira. Sandy, how are you around the holidays?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to Kira, I'm also a student. So the end of semester is sort of looming. I'm right in the middle of the end of assignments and all my essays and all that kind of stuff. So stress is definitely like a higher for sure. And the other thing I deal with is depression on top of my OCD. And sometimes when I get really stressed out or quite anxious, the sort of depression and the OCD sort of flip-flop and they play off each other. And so one of the things I've found really helpful is like making some non-negotiables with myself, like sticking to a routine, getting some movement outside, even seeing the sun, like when the sun is out, really is really helpful. And just also like communicating with my friends and family in advance of the holidays and saying, you know, like, here's what I can manage, or here's what I can't manage or don't want to do, and just setting some expectations.
I love that. How were the holidays for you when you were more, involved with your OCD, when your OCD was more impacting your functionality?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I think now in a place of recovery, sort of well onto my OCD journey, it feels like a long time ago, but it wasn't really that long ago overall, because even though I had OCD symptoms since I was a toddler, I wasn't diagnosed till my mid-20s. So for a long time, I just thought I was really, really anxious and just said to everyone, well, I don't need therapy. And so I didn't even get talk therapy until I was just about to start university. And of course, we know that talk therapy makes OCD worse. So my undiagnosed OCD sort of loved the reassurance. But I think what I found challenging at this time of year was the reflection, because I would look back and say like, oh, like this year that passed wasn't the way that I wanted it to be. Or, I feel like I should have been different somehow. And I mean, I think some of my themes are perfectionism and moral scrupulosity. So I think they often play off each other, because I want to make holidays special for myself, but also for other people, and just make that like perfect special event. So I think when my OCD was worse, it was a lot of like compromises I would make because I would sort of want to please other people. And then in the end, it wouldn't do my own mental health any favors.
Really well said. Thank you, Sandy. Before we jump over to Katie, I just wanted to point it out. Katie thought I was going to make a joke, but I wasn't. I was being sincere. Wiley wrote, it's hard when I'm around a lot of family in a small space. It can be overwhelming with contamination, OCD. So can 100% relate to that. Eric wrote, I was thinking today about how I enjoyed the holidays so much more as a kid than as an adult. It's a very different experience. And that's definitely true as well for a number of different reasons. Zach wrote, the holidays are difficult for me because I'm forced into my many triggering scenarios that I ordinarily avoid. It's like a long exposure. So thank you for sharing those. Please continue filling the comment threads. If you have specific questions for all of us, one of us specifically, please just put their name in the comment and we'll be happy to get to questions. So Katie, how has your OCD impacted your holidays in the past and how are you doing now?
Yeah, it was actually really interesting listening to Kira and Sandy because it made me realize that this actually is the first time in my entire life that I'm not in school over the holidays, like my whole life. So I was thinking, I was like, okay, went through high school, went to college, went to grad school. Right out of grad school, I started working in educational chaplaincy. So was giving finals and grading finals and felt like in this whole period, and then shifted into doctoral work. And this is like the first holiday season. So it's actually really strange. And it gave me a little bit of insight because I'm feeling this weird space right now where I keep feeling like there's something that I need to be doing. And I've actually been racking my brain all day of what is this space? What am I supposed to be doing? And actually listening to Kira and Sandy, I'm like, oh my goodness, I've been so anxious about finals or end of semester for my entire life at this time that it feels like I'm missing out on something. So thank you all for giving me some insight around that. I think for me, the holidays historically have been really challenging, and I really appreciate that it's really just the past few years that I've started to really enjoy them in some ways, which feels even weird to say for the first time in my life. And I think historically, I was always looking at other people who looked like they were so happy and so twinkly and so present. And I remember thinking, like, why am I the one who has these violent, sexual, intrusive thoughts? What's wrong with me? If only I could get rid of these things, I could be so happy like this person. And it took a really long time to be in a space to say, oh, wait, I can have intrusive thoughts and have OCD and still have a really beautiful holiday. But I think it was always hard, just kind of that comparison piece for me. I think also now, as much as I really enjoy the holidays more than I used to, I think it can be really, really tough thinking back to, as we alluded to with Kira, like past holiday seasons. And I spent a lot of holidays in educational chaplaincy, where unfortunately we had some really traumatic losses over the holidays, where I was supporting folks around the holidays and navigating my own grief. And OCD latched onto some of those things really intensely. For folks who have heard my story, some of that is really tied to the holidays for me. So sometimes I wake up and my brain automatically goes back to those really tough times. And it makes me feel like I should be doing compulsions to keep myself safe. And I think for so many of us, that's our go-to when we are experiencing difficult emotions. It's rather than letting ourselves feel the grief or feel the anxiety or whatever it is, it feels like, oh, no, we have to fix, right? We have to do these things to make sure that we're safe. So I think right now, for me, the biggest thing I'm trying this year is giving myself permission to feel the feels, whether it's having extra space in my life or grief from the past, or even maybe a little bit of joy, which is really freaking scary for everybody with OCD. I think giving yourself permission to experience joy is sometimes the biggest exposure, but it's coming back to these emotions and not letting myself try to fix with the compulsions.
Well said. Thank you, Katie. Yeah, and for me, I think that I hated the holidays. I hated birthdays. I hated any time where there was responsibility where responsibility fell on me to be a certain way and things were expected of me. And for some reason, like, obviously there's work and things like that, but something about family and, expecting things of you felt like this intense added pressure. So, whether we were having guests over or family over, there was always this intense expectation for me to be a certain way and act a certain way. And especially it's hard when your family doesn't have any understanding of OCD, let alone you. Now, in my case, I had a diagnosis, but really no education around OCD, and neither did my parents. So, the conversation every year was, don't do that thing, Ethan. Like, can you just keep it together and be funny and, and don't just come to the table and please don't give me that look that you're upset and you're going to ruin those were the conversations. So I absolutely dreaded anytime there was a holiday or an opportunity that I was going to have to be okay. And of course I wasn't okay because I just had this anticipatory anxiety leading up to what was ultimately, a disaster, to the point where I would miss holidays or just not go or stay in my room, or when I moved out, just not come over because I just didn't want to deal with it, and so that was kind of the reality of my holiday season, or other things that people anticipated or expected me to be a certain kind of way. And then as I've entered sort of this maintenance management phase, the OCD, the holidays have really shifted for me to being really a wonderful time. And it doesn't mean that everybody's holiday should be wonderful. There's various reasons why they may not be. But for me, I appreciate the time off. I appreciate time with family and friends. And I also know that my OCD will get loud because my routine is off, to Sandy's point, right? So, I go into, holy crap, I have nothing to worry about. What should I worry about mode? And then I worry about stuff that I've never worried about or haven't worried about in a long time, as opposed to my usual worries. And I'm like, why am I worrying about this? And I think somebody else in the chat coined it foreboding joy. And that's, I think, what I feel is foreboding joy, right? To just let yourself be present however you are in the moment and experience it. But I definitely relate to the intensity that comes around this time of year. I relate to being challenged by OCD, family not understanding, and especially if your family does understand, but other family members don't, or extended family doesn't, or certain friends don't, or some people understand and some people don't, or you don't get along with your family, but you're expected to be. It can present a whole lot of challenges, as other people have commented in the thread about having to be around people or being close, or, you're kind of forced to be in the situation that you may not want to be in. So totally relatable. I was going to see, I saw a comment.
Well, and while you're scrolling to that, well, I'll let you go ahead, Ethan.
No, go ahead, Katie.
I was just going to say, one thing as you're talking, I'm also realizing, and this is for so many folks that I work with in the religious side and in the scrupulosity side, I want to also highlight that this can be so challenging when you're navigating religious scrupulosity, because in these really holy times of year, or these times where it feels like, oh, we have to be really excited about this religious observance, we know that OCD latches onto the things that are the most important to us. So of course, that's a big time that it comes and latches on. I've had a lot of conversations throughout the fall with folks in our Jewish community around Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And it's really the same heading into this season. And this Sunday was the first Sunday of Advent for those in our Christian community. And it's this season of preparation. And I've already talked to a lot of folks who are very fearful. Am I preparing correctly? All of the different things, and even in tangible ways with lighting of candles at this time of year. There's all of these additional components of scrupulosity that can be really, 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 Alex, she wrote, thank you for it's tough, right? And even I've already heard from folks that even sermons on the first Sunday of Advent talking about preparation feel really intense. So that's an additional challenge at this time of year.
Sandy or Kieran, do you have anything to add? There was some fierce nodding going on, so I at least want to give you an opportunity.
Sandy, do you have anything to add to that point? I have something else, but I can go after.
Yeah, I guess one thing that I like to think about is that regardless of, your cultural traditions around this time of year, it's pretty dark out, but like a lot of the different holidays and cultural milestones we celebrate is all about light.
Yep.
And I just think there's so much power in that, because as a community, whether we're in the OCD community or beyond, like we're all bringing light to each other in the darkest times of winter. So I don't know, it gives me some hope.
Sandy, I feel like you're doing a promotion for our Faith and OCD Roundtable. I don't know if it's next week or the week after. It's finding light in the darkness, and it's finding light with all of these traditions in these seasons. So like we are totally on the same wavelength. It gives me so much hope too. I love that.
I love that, Sandy. Go ahead, Kira.
Oh, yeah, I was just like reading through the chat in general and going back to what Wiley said. It says it's hard when I'm around a lot of family in a small space. It can be overwhelming for my contamination OCD. That reminded me of something that's going to be a little bit different this holiday season. My aunt and uncle are actually coming down to Houston, which is super, super fun. But also the last time that they were here, my OCD was at its worst. It was summer of 2021, and I still feel so much shame because I feel like I like ruined that whole visit. And I didn't want to make like their vacation miserable and things like that. And one of the big things that happened, like it was the first time they'd been to our house. We were giving them a tour. I showed them my room and everything, but they were just outside. And they were like kind of like walking on the floor without shoes on. And then they went up into my room, and then they kind of like walked around. And in the moment I was like, yep, I'm fine. Like I was like putting on the like I'm fine face, and then I would just ruminate about it like the rest of the day until after everybody else went to sleep. I went and I like had to deep clean my room from like everything. And then my mom kind of like walked in on me, and I was sobbing, like mopping my bathroom floors. And everything was just like soaking wet, and I was just trying to like clean everything, and it was just so bad. And of course she didn't want me to do those kinds of compulsions, and I hadn't really started my getting better on OCD train yet. So I was pretty much giving into all of the compulsions that I thought I needed to do. And so obviously she was not happy. A screaming match ensued, woke up the whole family, and I felt so like responsible for ruining the vibes of that kind of trip. And it's my contamination OCD revolves a lot around people being in my space and things like that. Thankfully, it's gotten a lot better. I have been hosting my friends in my dorm room quite a bit, doing exposures like that, having some fun like debrief sessions and talking. But yeah, and I know this year will be fine because I have all of the tools I need to succeed, but just thinking about that again gets me like a little bit worried. And also being in my home where I like was at my rock bottom, was doing all my compulsions. Sometimes when I'm back in that kind of environment, I was like, oh, last time I was here, I felt the need to like wash my hands every time I touched like the upstairs like gate to go up and things like that. So it's hard to break those habits. But I have faith that I can persevere, and hopefully Christmas will all be good. And I know that they don't like hold it against me or whatever, because that's not who they are. They're super sweet people. But I just felt like a lot of shame surrounding that, and that I was like single-handedly responsible for ruining like what was supposed to be a nice week, them taking off of work and everything like that, the first time visiting us in Texas. And I was just like, I feel bad that OCD kind of took that experience away. So now it's my redemption arc. So we will have a great time this year. But yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing such a personal experience. Really appreciate it. And I think that, obviously it wasn't your fault. And I know that's hard to accept, even though like it's easy to say, but like I know times that we've all done that and like, oh no, it was my fault, I acted a certain way. But also like I want to offer to you, like I hope you're giving I think it will be a beautiful redemption arc, right? But at the same time, like offer yourself so much self-compassion that your job isn't to go there and like offer them this completely opposite experience because you owe it to them. You're going to go and be you. You're going to go and be the Kira that is today and offer the love and self-compassion and the present-mindedness, that you have to offer now. And because of that, and because you'll be following your values, the experience will be different. and hopefully you view it in that way, because I think that takes some pressure off and really is just about being you and being yourself, and however that plays out, that's okay. Also, I relate a lot to going home to where things happen. I know we all do in some way. I find it very triggering. But I also, Katie and I like to create new memories, right? Mm-hmm. Places that were once triggering or different, or things happened. And so, yeah, all of the above. But thank you for sharing. Sandy, did you have anything to add?
I don't think so.
Okay, cool. I'm talking more than usual. I'm being a bad moderator. Love Lana wrote, I love the special time of year with family, extended family. We are free to leave and go back to home sweet home if not enjoying it or tire from the socializing. I think this is funny and so true. I think boundaries are valid, and I think that, yes, there may or may not be expectations that may or may not be true, but I think that setting boundaries for oneself is very acceptable and very reasonable, and also not the easiest for those of us with OCD and any type of moral scrupulosity. But I think that is, we can't control anybody else, but we can control ourselves. And as long as we feel like we've had enough for a value-driven reason and we're not avoiding it, right? I think it's very valid to leave. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that. Eric B wrote, my OCD revolves around hyper responsibility and perfectionism, so I feel a lot of pressure to make and do everything right this season. And go ahead, Katie.
No, I just relate to this so deeply. I mean, my whole OCD journey has been about wanting to get things right, wanting to be perfect, wanting with the hyper responsibility, but also moral scrupulosity, wanting everyone to like me. And we did our Thanksgiving early a couple weeks ago because of the way that kind of cancer treatment lined up for my mom. She came and visited us a few weeks early for us to host. And it was the first time that we were hosting an official holiday at our home. And it was such a beautiful thing. And also OCD definitely came to the party in lots of different ways, because I felt so much like this is supposed to be special. I want to be perfect. I want to get this right. And Eric, to your point, I want to do all of the right things. I want everyone to get along. I want everyone to be happy. And I think, Ethan saw, I ended up being incredibly stressed because his family wanted to do certain things at our house. My family wanted to do certain things. I wanted everyone to, be 20,000% happy all the time. And I think it was also at the same time a really good exposure opportunity to recognize that it wasn't going to be perfect. And it wasn't perfect, actually. And I think there's actually perfection in the imperfect, except for the turkey that Ethan cooked, which was absolutely perfect. But there actually is a lot of perfection in the imperfection.
Yeah, for sure. Nathan wrote, Eric, I'm a perfectionist too, but I'm getting better at recognizing when the situation doesn't warrant absolute perfection. And I love that, but there's an addendum to that. And I pose this to the group, which is, does the situation ever warrant absolute perfection?
No, we're human.
I love Kim Quinlan's idea of just aim for a B- on everything, regardless of what it is. And that's generally good enough. And good enough is just good enough.
I love that.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's hard to aim for B-. Go ahead, Kara.
No. You go. I've yapped already too much. You go.
Please. I'm counting the words and I'm down. I'm up, so go ahead.
Okay. I was just about to say, yeah, I also used to have very bad perfectionism, OCD, as it related to school and everything, which also makes finals week a little bit more stressful because I can feel myself waiting for the grades to come out and needing if I just do this a little bit more, I need to get 100% an A and everything like that. But since I've come to college, my, expectations have definitely changed. I credit that to general chemistry. Kicked my butt freshman year. But yeah, getting over that hurdle was definitely very, very difficult for me. And especially going into final season, understanding that, I have worth outside of perfect grades and things like that. And at the end of the day, I just need to obviously study hard and everything, but if I work myself to the bone, then that's just not good for anybody. And that can just, I get burnt out so fast that way. And then I don't get good grades either. So definitely taking some time to yourself and realizing that whether it's studying one more for an hour or taking a mental health break that's definitely needed, or implementing ERP is definitely very, very important for me regarding like perfectionism, OCD. So yes, I'm also getting better, and I love to hear other people too. So we're slaying that game.
I love that, Kira. I think self-care and putting your oxygen mask on first is very, very important. So
and I'll say, like, for anybody who's hearing that, like, we're talking about you too, because I think it's so easy for us to, I'll go ahead and call myself out on this. I talk about this like all day long. I talk about self-compassion. I'm like, be nice to yourself. It's okay to, you don't have to be perfect to be enough. I mean, all those things, like, that's all I say. And then Ethan knows then in my own life, I get off of doing work around OCD or advocating, and I'm like, but I'm a horrible person and I have to be perfect, right? So I want y'all to know that anybody who's listening, this really does apply to you too. And you are so worthy of putting your oxygen mask on first, and you don't have to be perfect.
One of my favorite quotes that really helped me on like my journey was, it's important to choose yourself over your OCD. And for the longest time, I felt like I was choosing my OCD and I was letting it control me. But choosing yourself is always and will always be the most important thing. And OCD can take a back burner, but you matter more, and you are worth more than OCD and whatever it tries to tell you. So
I love that. And it's really powerful to also learn that there's you and OCD. It separates the two, and that OCD is a choice, you know. So it's not just
having OCD isn't a choice, but
right.
Engaging in the compulsion is a choice. I always am like, having OCD isn't a choice, but I think there's a lot of empowerment in recognizing that how we respond to it each and every time, we really do get to make a choice. And I find so much meaning in that of like, I didn't choose to have OCD, and it sucks and it's awful and all of the things. And take that OCD. I get to choose how to respond to you now and always. And that's really awesome.
Exactly. Wiley wrote, I also had the feeling I had, this is referring to Kira's comments. I had cousins visiting, but I left the house due to feeling overwhelmed, felt bad for years. Well, hopefully you're showing yourself some self-compassion now. Jessica wrote, I'm listening to this for my 14-year-old daughter, but I'm wondering if I may have OCD or severe anxiety experienced. I've experienced a lot of this. Katie, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I thought you were gonna. I was nodding, but I thought you were gonna comment on it first.
Well, you have more degrees than I do.
That's okay.
Sure, I'll comment. So, first of all, thank you for listening for your 14-year-old daughter. I know this time of year can be really challenging, and it isn't uncommon for a lot of people to hear a lot of the symptoms and symptomatology and things that are involved with OCD and anxiety and related disorders. And, the real question becomes, is it a disorder, or is it just obsessions or compulsions or anxiety, which don't necessarily have to be a disorder. Those can be just life experience things, right? So the first thing I would obviously suggest is that if you're concerned, even for yourself, that there's some things going on, to reach out to an professional and be properly assessed. That being said, beyond that, like I said, we can be obsessed about Christmas and we can be compulsive about buying decorations. The real question is, does it cross over into that disorder category, where, your functioning and your ability to follow your values is being interfered by that? Similar to the anxiety, is it getting to a point where it's interfering with your enjoyment or your ability to be somewhere or do something or be present or hang out with someone? And if that's the case, if you relate to that in some way, that it might be worth it to go, go find an expert in your area, a local clinician, and have a further discussion. And also, if you're watching and you wonder where you can find a clinician in your area, the IOCDF offers a really extensive resource directory. If you just go to the IOCDF website, and I think you could search resource directory, it's also one of the hangy things down at the bottom as Katie looks for it quickly to put in the comments. I know what you're doing. That would be awesome. So thank you, Jessica, for that. And if your daughter has any questions for us, feel free to plug it in the chats. Happy to answer. Alex, she wrote, they also don't know about or understand our self-imposed OCD limits and things we call boundaries, but they were actually avoidances. And I think that's a really good separation. Sandy, do you want to talk a little bit about yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that OCD can make our worlds really, really small if we're not pushing back by doing ERP and, evidence-based treatments for OCD that actually help us regain our lives from OCD. And I think for me, a big compulsion was avoidance for sure. I'd feel scared or I feel anxious. So I think, oh, well, this is dangerous, but just sort of recognizing that I can feel scared or I can feel anxious, but it's not necessarily dangerous. And even if something bad happens, I am capable of coping. And so is everyone, though. That's the thing. Treatment gives us tools to learn how to cope and be really strong human beings.
I love that, Sandy. Thank you. I lost my place. I apologize. I was looking for a comment, and in doing so, I lost my place. Zach wrote, the holidays bring up a lot of religious trauma for me, including discrimination I've experienced for being gay in religious communities. Do you want to touch on religious trauma a little bit, Katie?
Yeah, no, just Zach, thank you so much for bringing that up. And I think this is such a challenging time of year in religious communities all year, but especially during this time. And we were in my church this past weekend at the start of Advent. It's primarily an LGBTQIA plus community. We're actually having this conversation of how many folks, this was their first year feeling like they were in a safe space within a faith community, and at the same time feeling so much grief and trauma and loss for not experiencing that in past years. And even seeing things in the Christian context, like the Advent wreath, that while they were in a safe space, was taking them back to times where they didn't feel affirmed. And all I want to say, Zach, to you and to anyone who's navigating that is, I'm sorry, and it is not okay. And oh my gosh, I wish that every faith community was open and affirming, and they should be. And I have lots of very strong thoughts about that. But just the religious trauma is so valid, and please be gentle with yourself at this time of year and always.
Thank you, Katie. Jen wrote, food is hard for me because I struggle with a good relationship with food after years of eating disorders. And definitely, obviously, the holidays centers a lot around food. That was one of the things that was really hard with COVID, right? So especially for those with contamination and moral scrupulosity, where, if you'd been involved in doing ERP and related therapies, then, you would practice not washing your hands and not checking the things. And then suddenly the TV and the government's telling you to do all the things that you practice not doing. And it becomes really challenging to find the balance. So I think you're definitely not alone in that. And please feel free, Kira, Sandy, or Katie, to interrupt me as we go through.
Yeah, just speaking to Michael's comment at 7:44, I think there is a lot of pressure to be, let's say, good, happy, and during the holidays. And I think that can be a lot of very stressful. But at the same time, I found a lot of value in putting an and beside I can be stressed and because of the expectations, but also I can find small moments of joy, or people are expecting me to feel like this, but I also feel like this, and I can define how I'm going to show up because I get to live a life that's unique to me and my values. Well
said, Sandy. I love that. I'm going to back up quickly to Eric's comment. There's a strong moral and people-pleasing aspect to my perfectionism too, Katie. I can relate. There's some conversation on perfectionism going on that I want to address. But quickly, we're sharing Lisa Smith, who I thought for a second was my mother. My mom is Liz Smith, and she pops on every now and again. I watched a great video recently discussing the benefits of recognizing the differences between our ideal and our real. It helps me keep me grounded at this time of year. Curious if you want to put what video you saw or a link, would love to know. So Eric wrote, and we can be the experts in this, so he's clearly referring to me. One thing I wanted to ask an expert about, some of the perfectionism books talk about healthy versus unhealthy perfectionism, and others talk about high versus perfect standards. What words do you use? Or how do you define perfectionism in the way? Curious to all of your thoughts on that, if you have thoughts.
Yeah, for me, healthy versus unhealthy perfectionism. I'll start there. I always have been an overachiever, things like that, like to do my best, like to put my best foot forward. But I can definitely tell when it's getting into the perfectionism OCD, when it starts to eat away at me. I feel very fulfilled when I do my best and I feel prepared and I put my best foot forward and everything like that. But I kind of feel differently when OCD is kind of taking control. And then I start to feel burnt out, that I'm never doing enough, that I'm not worth anything if I don't get amazing grades, or if I don't do everything perfectly, or if I'm not constantly preparing, like I'm doing something wrong. So that's how I kind of distinguish between healthy and unhealthy. But yeah, as it always, sometimes the lines get kind of blurred. Like this one project I was working on a lot. It was for my moot court presentation, and my friend and I, who were doing the presentation together, were working so hard, day and night. We were so nervous because we thought that the federal judges that were judging the kind of competition were going to eat us up. And then I was going to prep all of Thanksgiving, and then my professor actually told me don't do that. You did really great this round. You will get so burnt out. And that kind of helped take me back to, I've been there and I've done that. So that makes a lot of sense. And, I was just I could spend every last waking moment doing this, but also I have so much other work that I need to devote time to, and so much that work that I've already put into this, I deserve to take some time for myself. My mom and I we've both been super stressed this holiday season. We both need to just veg out on the couch. We watched the entire new season of Outer Banks and things like that. So I always strive for perfection, but I feel now I'm more comfortable knowing that I won't attain it, and knowing that my best is good enough, which for a long time, especially being an athlete, kind of my coaches told me, your best isn't good enough. You need to do more and more. And that kind of was ingrained in me from a very young age. But now I'm just kind of trying to rework and say, you know what? Their words don't have any control or power over me anymore. I'm out of that kind of situation. And yeah, my best is good enough, and that's just all that matters. And yeah.
Love that. Sandy.
Yeah, I saw in the chat someone was talking about don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I'd add to that, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good enough. Because most of the time, good enough is good enough. And there is so much beauty in showing up as ourselves, who we truly are. And if that's messy, if that's imperfect, if that's not always saying the right thing or doing the right thing, but we're trying our best. I think there's a lot of value in just remembering we're all human and we're all living this life for the first time. And that's hard. So just give yourself the grace that you give to other people, I guess.
I love that. Thank you, Sandy. Nathan makes an interesting comment. Surgery warrants perfection. I also suggest working in space warrants perfection. Because, if you screw up, I've never thought too much.
I'm going to tell my surgeon just to do their best. It's okay. You're best enough.
Yeah, just
as long as you're doing well. If you need to take a break during, that's okay.
Okay, we're good.
Just okay is good enough for me on this heart transplant. I I've never overly thought about perfectionism. Although I did discover apparently when I cooked turkeys, I wanted it to be perfect, and it stressed me the F out.
Y'all, I cannot even tell you. He had like 4 meat thermometers going and was like checking each one to make sure they weren't lining up correctly. It was a
That's
thing.
also because I have food contamination issues. So I mean, like, there was a double-edged sword there. But what I will say is I also wonder, like, the difference between perfectionism and our desire to be perfect, or the pressure that we put on ourselves to be perfect. Like, I think that you can turn in a perfect audition or take a perfect test, right? But there's a difference between the person that really had a great time doing it or a fun time doing it, was prepared, or absolutely just destroyed themselves, weren't compassionate at all, exhausted themselves trying to achieve that level of perfection and repeating that over and over again, as Kara talked about, until you burn out, right? It's like when we watch The Voice, a reality show, and somebody turns in a killer, perfect performance. Did they have fun doing that, or were they actually completely unable to function leading up to that moment? Because that's ultimately what we're talking about, is like the ability to function and effectively, move forward, live presently, have a good time, enjoy yourself, whatever it is. Not that Kira's finals are a good time per se, right? But it's finding that balance. I learned about good enough in the industry. Everything I put out had to be perfect. And when I started doing things for other people, creative content and things like that, I remember I was editing a project that I had. It was my first like big job that somebody paid me to direct and produce, and I was editing, and I had to get it perfect. And I spent 7 days editing this 2.5 minute short, and it should have taken me 2 days, and I didn't know, and I went extremely over budget, got yelled at, and they're like, sometimes you just got to give me what you got. It's got to be good enough. And over time, I suddenly learned exactly what everyone here is talking, that good enough is enough a lot of the times. And I turned in lots of stuff that wasn't where I wanted it to be, but hey, if everybody else seemed happy with it, I guess I could live with it too. So I also think there's a time and a place for like really trying to, get it perfect, but not at the sacrifice of your own health.
I think, as you're talking, I've been thinking about perfectionism a lot lately. And I think for me, I find that when I put so much effort to get things right and to be perfect, I somehow stop being myself. And yes, we're not enjoying it, but I think it also everything loses a flavor of who we are. And I found that with my running, when Kira, I had some really intense coaches too, that it took the love for me out of running for a really long time. And I realized that when I stopped trying to get it right and trying to get it perfect and had fun and was just myself, I actually started performing better. And I think that sometimes that really happens. And gosh, I think there is something to not trying to be perfect and just trying to be ourselves. And thinking about, for folks right now who are watching Wicked, it's one of my favorite shows of all time. I'm so excited. We're finally actually seeing it this weekend, but I am going to have such a tough time not singing throughout the entire thing. So I apologize for everyone who's going to be in the show with us. But Idina Menzel, she was talking about her original audition for Alphaba. And she totally apparently screwed up that really high part of Defying Gravity on her original audition. I'm not going to try. I don't know why I'm trying to imitate this. This is not good. I'm not going to.
You got it. You got it. We're going to
good.
No, I'm in the house with her. Please do not imitate.
But she said she totally screwed it up in the audition, and she paused and she actually looked at the pianist and gave him like a death glare, like, don't go on. I'm going to like fix this my way. And she redid the note. And the director said that's when he knew she had the part, because she was wicked in the way that she looked at him, but also had the ability to mess up and still be confident and step forward as her. And that really resonated with me, that it wasn't her hitting the note. It was actually her screwing up and still being her in that moment that actually helped her get the part.
I love that piece of show trivia. That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Go, Katie. Moving on. No, I'm just kidding. So this is a great question. CJ wrote, how do you know when it's depressive versus holiday blues?
So I'll take this one. For me, I was diagnosed with depression from a clinician. So that's how I knew I had depression, was getting that medical expertise. But I think holiday blues is pretty common because it's dark out. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of expectations. Maybe there's like, feelings like you have to buy gifts or go to social events or lots of different things happening. And I also think like there's a lot of pressure on the idea that you have to gel and find that perfect relationship within your own family, but sometimes like chosen family can be really powerful too. And so I was seeing a few comments about being, feeling some loneliness or not having like the ideal family home to go back to. And I think there's so much power in knowing that just because the people who you maybe were born into their family didn't give you the perfect experience or they're gone now doesn't mean you can't find other people who will love and cherish you.
I love that. And that probably came from Lana's comment about when my brother and I moved into our new home, when our birth mom gave us up that first Christmas and all the following ones, our new family made us feel so welcome and equal in their family ever since. And I love that, Lana. Thank you for sharing that with us. Katie, did you have any additional insight on the difference between depressive and blues, or Kira? I have some thoughts, but.
No, go. I actually love everything that was just shared, but go ahead if you have some additions.
Yeah, I definitely echo Sandy's suggestion and insight. I'll only also add that, a lot of times depression can be secondary to OCD and commonly follows it. It may not be a primary diagnosis, but, as your OCD kicks up, it seems totally natural to get depressed and feel depressed. I also think you can just, as part of life, feel sad, and doesn't necessarily have to be, a quote unquote depression. I know I feel emotional and sad sometimes. And I think at the end of the day, and Robert Spence mentioned this, I think it also comes down to functionality, and how are you functioning? How are you moving through life? How are you being present minded? I think that, you can go into any circumstance and feel the blues, if you will, and feel kind of down and not feel as peppy or as excited, but you're still kind of moving through it. And eventually you come out of it. If it's sustained sadness, if you're noticing your behavior is starting to change, if you're spending more time in bed, if you're isolating, things like that, then, you might be headed more toward a depressive state and seeking an expert that could help identify what that is. But it is by no means uncommon, whether it's depression or holiday blues or otherwise, when you're navigating OCD and your OCD spikes up, and you start to feel a certain kind of way about the holidays or things like that, and you start to beat yourself up because you're acting a certain way and it is my fault and I'm ruining this thing, then the natural progression is to be upset about that. So that makes total sense. We only have a couple more minutes. I saw a comment. I think this is a great question. I want to answer Zach's question.
I was going to pull that. I was looking at that too. I'm glad you pulled that.
So Zach M says, what should I do if my family is afraid of making my OCD worse? And so they make everything about OCD, like asking if I can handle things. Katie or Kira, do you want to take that?
I'll jump in first. I mean, Zach, I think this is such a great question. And I think there's two pieces. It's like, wow, I'm so glad that your family cares so deeply that they want to be involved in this process, and that they want to make sure to do the kind of quote unquote right things. And I also think it's a really great learning opportunity as a family to maybe even kind of going into the holiday, if you're noticing this is something that's happening, to be able to tell them, hey, I am so thankful that you are so committed to kind of helping me on this OCD journey. And also, I'm really seeing this holiday as an opportunity to make my OCD smaller, and as an opportunity to engage in exposure and response prevention, and maybe using it as an opportunity to share with them a little bit about what that looks like, and telling them, I have got this, I can handle it. And also, letting them know that you'll tell them if you need help and support, that you don't necessarily want them to accommodate or act differently in terms of content, but that you may need help on the emotional side. Letting them know that you're happy to come and tell them if you're feeling triggered and you need somebody to just tell you that you've got this, and like you can sit with all of the hard thoughts and feelings. But I think letting them know that on the side of being worried that they're going to make your OCD worse by doing something, that it's actually the opposite. It's them acting as they usually would, and trusting that you have got this, that is going to make your OCD even smaller in this journey.
Definitely. I echo everything that was said. For me, I think it goes both ways. I enjoy some people like keeping me accountable, and being like, hey, like I noticed you doing this new thing. Is that maybe OCD? Especially when I'm like really stressed out and maybe not giving it as much attention as I should. But also I can definitely, for a long time, I was made to feel like I was my OCD, and I feel like making everything about OCD may be fine for like other people because obviously they really want to help you. But as someone with OCD and who already has all of those thoughts going around like 24/7, like sometimes I just need a break, and sometimes that is not like OCD, because talking about it while it's going on in your head, that's just, I feel like OCD overload at that point. So I think definitely having like discussions beforehand and saying, just telling them how that makes you feel as well, saying, hey, I appreciate that you care, and that makes me feel really supported, but it can also make me feel like as an individual, I'm not as important as my OCD is. And I think that that's definitely a very important discussion to have. I feel like my family may be asking this question this upcoming like kind of Christmas season and things like that. And I guess for where I'm at right now, I can pretty much just say, as you normally would, I have faith in myself that I can stick it out. But if I need to excuse myself for a hot sec and use some of my therapy tools, just give me a little bit of grace on that. But yeah, definitely communication, I think, is key and will definitely help, especially since they're already being like very supportive, which we love. We love family members that support OCD. But remember, as much as we want the OCD to go away, we also want the individual to shine through, like too. So like supporting them rather than their OCD. Very important hot tip. But yeah.
Kira, I love, and as you're talking, I mean, I'm resonating so much with wanting to be seen as a person and not as our OCD. And I think I'll say for me, this is still probably one of the things that I struggle the most with at family stuff. And something came up when my family was here a couple weeks ago. Long story short, we just bought a house and my family decided they were going to like ship every childhood thing that they had in the basement to our house now that we have space to store it. So we like got all this stuff. And I heard my mom tell Ethan, we sent Katie like this whole box of diaries from when she was younger, but I don't think she can handle reading some of it because of her OCD. And I was like, oh, Mom, like, I don't know. It really actually, and it was meant from such a loving place of we don't want Katie to get triggered. We don't want her to get heightened of stuff that happened in the past. And it was kind of like a dagger to me of like, why does my mom think that I can't handle this? I want her to see me for the person that I am and not for my disorder. So I kind of snapped back and I was like, no, Mom, I can handle it. She's like, no, but you have OCD. I said, Mom, that doesn't mean that I can't handle those things. And I think for me, that's actually still, I don't know, one of the biggest areas of growth with even my family in these occasions is wanting them to see me over my disorder.
Definitely. And I feel like it's, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Tom.
I was just about to say, I feel like it's so natural for like people wanting to protect you. But I feel like the way that they can protect you the most is like exposing you to things and letting you use your own tools and kind of like kicking you out of the nest and letting you fly on your own kind of vibe for that. But definitely I resonate and echo everything you just said as well.
I echo everything everybody else said. I will add the addition that also, you know, there's a good chance that our parents have trauma too around, you know, our own OCD. So we have to be sensitive toward that. Sure. The only other thing, Zach, I'll add to what everybody else said, and they nailed it, is when you decide to sit down with your parents, choose a time where you're not triggered. Choose a time where you're calm and you have a lot of objectivity and insight. Secondly, you know, my parents trigger me a lot unintentionally. So if you feel like,
sorry, Liz, if you're on the live stream.
It was Lisa, we're fine. So what I was going to suggest is write down what you want to talk about or what you want to say. So that way, if something occurs, you don't get flustered. You can stay on topic and keep it just kind of calm and even. And I love what everybody else said. Okay, final thoughts moving into this holiday, the stretch of the holiday season. I'm going to end with Sandy. So let's start with Katie.
I was in my head. I was going, don't go to me first. Don't go to me first. But it's fine. It's cool. No, just always such an honor to be here with the IOCDF, with this group. This has been lovely, and thank y'all so much for being so authentic in the chat. And I think my biggest thing would be just wherever you are, whatever you're feeling, it is absolutely valid. You don't have to feel a particular way or act a particular way because it's quote unquote the holidays. Your feelings are valid, whether that is joy or grief or anxiety, whatever that is, it's okay. And I hope that you give yourself space to feel all of the feels without judgment, and that you give OCD space to take a hike and to not take that opportunity to feel away from you, and just for you to be able to show up as you are in these moments.
Kira, I was going to make a joke about your microwave, but I just decided to call your name. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Yeah, don't be mean to my puny little microwave. She's doing her best, and she has gotten me through the year so far. We love her. She's a fighter, just like us OCD baddies. I was just gonna say, I know like the holidays can sometimes be like lonely. I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, about like making like your friends, your family. I just want everyone to also know, like, if you're like in the OCD community, you know that all of us have your back. We're all here supporting you. And for me, at least, feel free to like reach out if you need anything, but we're always here. We're always here to hype you up. And thanks again for listening to me yap and for being so amazing and like active in the chat. We love talking to everybody. But just remember, like, last kind of words, you deserve an amazing holiday season, and don't let OCD stand in the way of that. And if you, this year may be the best, don't put pressure on yourself for it to be amazing, but just know that no matter what, despite your thoughts, despite what OCD is trying to tell you, you deserve the most amazing. So choose yourself over your OCD. I will stop yapping.
We love your yaps. But
Thank you.
I love that, Kira. Choose you over your OCD. It's such a good line. I am going to borrow that 100%.
Oh my gosh, I'll give you full permission.
Oh, good. Thank you. So I guess the thing I want to say is wherever you are on your OCD journey, you are valuable, you are lovable, and you are enough just as you are. And it is powerful and strong to reach out for community and support. So if you need to reach out during the holidays, there's no shame in that, because we're all human. We're all just trying to do our best. So there's helplines, there's your clinical team, there's your friends. There's lots of people who want you to have a wonderful, wonderful, meaningful season. Yeah.
thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Kira. Thank you, Katie. As someone who's questionably human based on scans and my parents' opinion, I want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you for the great comments. Thank you for the great conversation. Thank you again, Kira, Sandy, and Katie, for being amazing. So many good, as I like to call them, truth bombs today, and so much great insight. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Hang tight. As always, I want to thank Emilio behind the scenes in the IOCDF for keeping the lights on. It's the worst line. My line last year was better. I have to come up with something new this next year because the lights on, not so good.
I'm pretty sure you've said that since like 2008.
No, it was new this year. Anyway, can we mute please? Anyway, so did you know the IOCDF is a donor-supported nonprofit organization? Today on Giving Tuesday, you can help bring hope to those impacted by OCD by donating. Our goal is to raise $20,000 at midnight tonight to support vital resources for the OCD and related disorders community. You can visit iocdf.org/Giving Tuesday to help us get there. As always, subscribe, follow, like, share on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all the places, so you get notified, and you can join us when our lives happen. And I think that is everything. If you have questions, comments, need resources, please don't hesitate to visit iocdf.org, available 24/7. We are here to support in any way that we can. With that, have a beautiful, amazing, phenomenal holiday season, whatever faith, whatever religion, whatever tradition you practice. Be kind, be gentle, be sensitive to yourself, be self-compassionate, offer yourself lots of love. Now, however it goes down, there's always tomorrow. We got today. And thank you so much. So thanks again, Katie, Kira, and Sandy. As always, stay safe, stay vigilant, feel the feels. Don't let OCD off the hook. And we'll see you next time. Have a good night.